What truths guide your decisions, and why do you trust them? Hi, Ryan.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good to see you.
Same. Right. So are there things in your life that you hold as unquestionably true?
I think there are, and I think the older I get, the more I lighten up on that.
Okay.
So I think what truth is changes as I get older, I think. I don't know.
Okay. So more questioning comes with the truth?
Yeah, I think more questioning, and the longer I live, the more I see that most things are not true, or I probably view them differently as I get older.
I actually think I agree with that. I think I hold things unquestionably true until I don't. I started questioning whether or not I wanted to go back and get a master's. And then after finishing that, I definitely didn't have my sights on a doctorate. But lo and behold, years later, I went back again. And if you had asked me when I walked across the stage for my bachelor's degree, I would have said, no, that is not in my future. That I'm not even entertaining it as a possibility. I do think that things are unquestionably true for me.
Until they're not. So what was the last time you changed your mind about something that you thought was obvious?
I grew up hating bacon. And I mean hating it. When my mom cooked bacon, I would close my door. I would light a candle because I didn't want to smell it. I hated bacon. As an adult, did not want to smell bacon, never wanted to eat bacon, had both of my children, still hated bacon. Randomly, one day I was visiting a friend in North Carolina. We went out for pizza and I had a taste for bacon on my pizza. I kid you not. This was just out of the blue.
Yeah.
I was in my 30s and had bacon that day and never looked back.
Nice.
And I now have bacon all the time, which is so random. But the reality is, I couldn't tell you what changed my mind about it. I couldn't tell you what things happened earlier in my life that led me to that decision that I was going to try bacon on pizza that day. But it's something that I think was always so obvious to me that, like, no, I don't eat bacon. That was a part of my identity. No, I don't eat bacon. So for that to just flip, and now it's something that I do on a regular basis, that's one of the larger things that has happened in my life without explanation even, that I changed my mind about something that I thought, and most people who knew me would say was obvious.
Yes.
What about you?
I think the last time I changed my mind about something that I thought was obvious was there was this student in my class, and he came to the front and they have to introduce themselves, or they have to introduce a partner in the class. And he said his favorite movie was Legally Blonde. And it seemed really obvious that his favorite movie would not be Legally Blonde. So everybody in the class was asking him questions, and he knew the movie.
So it wasn't a joke.
It wasn't a joke. He really loved that movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I like that.
I do too. I think breaking down barriers like that. Mm-hmm. And this last week in my class, we talked about when I was a kid, if you had tattoos, it was said, if you have tattoos, you're probably not going to work. Mm-hmm. There's not a job for you.
There was a real stigma.
There was a real stigma with it. And now I feel like that's opened up. Yeah.
I agree. And I think we've opened up to understand that tattoos are not always a rebellious statement. Because I think that's where some of that stigma came from, that you're rebellious because you have this, because our society said you can't do it, so you did it. But now we know, or it's at least become more recognized, that there's a lot of other reasons why people get tattoos.
Absolutely.
Cultural, spiritual. So I think that the mainstream has opened up its ideas of what that tattoo can mean, which then allowed for us to not just see it as rebellious.
Hello, thinkers.
Welcome to Quote Mining,
the bite-sized podcast where each week we explore where quotes come from by stepping inside
and shining a light around to see what's buried beneath the surface, see how they shape the way we connect, and whether they hold up in real life.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Leslie.
Some quotes shine immediately.
And some require excavation.
We bring the questions.
You bring your curiosity.
Ready?
Let's start mining. Today's quote: truth is self-evident.
This suggests that truth does not need defense.
Truth simply is. At its core meaning, this quote is saying that we accept truth based on its own logic. When something is self-evident, it reveals itself through reason, experience, or observation.
The idea of the phrase is something most Americans are familiar with, as it shows up in the United States Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. The quote is much older than our country and has roots in ancient philosophy.
We use this quote as a standalone explanation for unquestionable truth. John Hasling, a professor emeritus and author of the public speaking textbook, The Audience, the Message, the Speaker, pushes back by stating, truth is not self-evident. If it is to prevail, it must be advocated for by men and women who are skillful in their communication. So, who decides what qualifies as self-evident?
Yeah, I think cultures decide it, and then people probably adopt it over time.
Yeah, I think I would take it a step further and say that the powers within a culture or the dominant power within a culture makes something self-evident, and then the cultural shift occurs where everyone understands it to be true.
Yeah, so a power structure is going to determine what is self-evident.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think where things can somewhat become muddied is who is recognized as powerful. And we have all of these different co-cultures and microcultures within our society. So we have mainstream culture, which most times that's where these self-evident truths are going to occur. But sometimes it's a co-culture that creates it, and then it gets its legs, its wings, and starts pushing forward. And all of a sudden, we have to recognize it in the greater sense of culture, even though it might have started with a small group.
And not that it has to do with what qualifies as self-evident, but like even the 6-7 trend doesn't mean anything, but you can't ignore that it's a part of culture and that it's a part of the group outside of someone who you would think that has power, a bunch of middle schoolers or, you know, like came up with
a small co-culture.
They came up with this trend that defined who they are.
Yep. And I think that also speaks to shared meaning, because we quickly became a society that had shared meaning on what 6-7 was supposed to mean. But even with that, it also helped us decide whether or not we were going to lean into it or not. And there were those of us who were like, I'm not dealing with that. And there were teachers who banned it from their classroom, to those that were engaging and wanted to use it in a comedic way or however kind of way, but encouraged the use of it. I think that we quickly learn sometimes that even when we want something to be in our society, and the powers might give us a statement that says yes or no to what it is we want to be, there is still power in those numbers for that final decision, because those middle schoolers made it, accepted it. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, it's not a thing anymore.
And I think it goes back. One of the things that I think about too is like when you start a new job, they give you a handbook, but that's not how you learn about your job. You learn about your job from the people that you're working with. So you might start this job and they give you this really thick handbook that tells you what you need to do in your job, but you really learn it from the community that's around you and the feedback that you get. Yeah.
Because it's not just what they're modeling, but also that feedback of, yep, you're on the right track, or nope, that is not how we do it. And you learn as you go. Yeah. It's true.
Sometimes repetition can make something feel self-evident. How do you distinguish what is loud from what is clear?
Oh, I like this question, and I think it leans to what we were just talking about in terms of learning a job, right? Because sometimes people are consistently doing things wrong or ineffective in a job or inefficient.
Yeah.
But because this is the way they've always done it, there's an assumption made that it's self-evident that this is the way to do it. And you have to push back and say, I get that you've always done it this way, but let's try it in this other way. And a lot of times when you know that it's going to be more efficient in your way, or you know that the proper way of doing something is XYZ, even though they've been doing ABC, getting them on board does allow for you to promote clarity in a situation where there is a lot of negative voice.
And I think about the classroom again because we think about building a culture within a classroom. And how do you distinguish what is loud from what is clear? What I think about is it only takes one student to ruin an environment. You could have all these other students who are really great and trying to learn, but it only takes that one person to be able to change the culture of the room.
I agree. I'm wondering then, can something feel self-evident and still be wrong?
Absolutely.
Tell me more.
I think because as we live, we start to see what works for us, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best way to operate. It just means that we were able to get by with that.
I definitely believe that having that introspection when you are engaging in something that you assume to be true is vital for us to continue to grow as humans. What truths guide your decisions, and why do you trust them?